Hello everyone. This is Rahul Shrivastava from GyanDhan. Thank you so much for joining this session. And GyanDhan is an education financing marketplace where we help students in getting abroad education loans through top lenders in India, all including all the government banks, private banks, and NBFCs, and also the international lenders. We help students in both secured and unsecured education loans and to educate student and make them aware about different aspects of study abroad. We organize events every week, and you can go and check out the events on our events page. And in the process, today we are organizing the webinar on the top hacks to ace the GRE exam. And for the same, we have a GRE expert with us, Mr. Ambarish Kumar. He is the academic head of Quant in IMS. And so, without wasting time, I would welcome Amrish to take over from here. And over to you, Amrish.
Hey, thanks, Rahul. Uh, so my name is Ambarish. So as Rahul introduced, I manage the quant part of study abroad segment at IMS. So if I could just, I would just request all of you to very quickly comment in at what stage of your GRE preparation are you currently? Have you just started? Are you aware of the process? Are you aware of the question types? If you could just type in, that would be helpful. To have this, I would like to keep this session as interactive as possible because I have very short presentation with couple of questions in it. So I would want your answers in the chat box so as to conduct this session effectively. All right. So I would request all of you to participate actively. So my first question is, what stage are you at right now?
So, guys, you can write that in the messages option. Yeah. So, there's one answer from Gitanjali, not started yet.
Not started yet. Okay. Um, how about others?
So, I'm waiting for others. Not started. Again, so two replies are for not started. There are
All
two
right.
more people. Yeah.
All right. So you have just, I would just assume that a lot of people attending the session have just, beginners. Okay. Um, so is it fair to assume that you know some of the question types in GRE, or you have absolutely no idea about the GRE question types?
Some idea. Uh,
Okay.
my
Okay.
answer.
All right. Fair enough. So let me just quickly share my screen. So let's see. So guys, agenda of today's session is to assess your GRE approach and to understand how effective your approach is. Okay. Now, what is again? You said that you have just started to prepare, or you have not yet started your preparation. So I feel that I probably have to take you through some of the basics of GRE exam itself. So understand that GRE exam has three components. One is AWA, that is analytical writing assessment, and then you have verbal reasoning, and then you have a quant reasoning. Okay. So how these verbal reasoning, quant reasoning sections are arranged within the exam, so that's something that we will discuss in detail later on. But understand that these are the three components within GRE. Okay, so it basically tests how good are you at verbal reasoning, how good are you at quantitative reasoning, this is basically math, and how good are your analytical writing skills. Okay, now for most of the schools, okay, for most of your target schools, this is the major component. This The score from these two components are something that most of the schools look at. Okay, so the scoring range of GRE is between 260 to 340, and for verbal reasoning, it's 130 to 170, and quant reasoning it's 130 to 170. The minimum that you can get is 130 in each of these. That makes it 260. The maximum that you can get is 170 in each. That makes it 340. Okay, so this is a very, very basic, idea of GRE exam. Something based on your target school, you may have to score, let's say, 320 plus or 325 plus or 300 plus. So all that depends on your profile, your target school, and your overall profile, basically. Okay. Now, any questions here?
No.
All right, super. So I basically thought that the audience today will be having students who have some idea about the exam. So what I will try to do in today's session is, so you need to have a very good understanding of how the overall test looks like. If I get into that, it will take a bit more of time and effort. So, but essentially understand that GRE exam is composed of these three components. Okay, so how many questions are there? What's the amount of time that you get for these sections is something that we can discuss later on. Okay, so we'll especially probably conduct a session where we just talk about the GRE test structure. Okay, so we'll basically focus on these two components. So what can you expect within these two components? Okay, so within verbal reasoning section, you have three different question types. So one is, let's look at the first one. This is text completion. Okay, so you will be given a text with 2 or 3 blanks, and for each blank you will be given options. You have to choose the correct option that fits in each of these blanks. Okay, so try to read this question once and then try to answer which word goes into which of these blanks. So I'll wait for your response. You can take 1 or 2 minutes to go through the entire text and to tell what exactly are the answers. So you can answer it as, let's say, A, E, H, A, F, I, whichever your answer is, you can just type in your response in that order.
Yeah, there are yet no answers.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just wait for another 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
No responses yet, Rahul?
Yeah, so there is two responses. One is BDI and second is ADI.
Okay, so A, D, I, and B, D, Okay. All right. So let's try to see, what are the correct answers here. Okay. So first, I want you to understand that a lot of people think GRE verbal listening is all about vocabulary mugging. You have to mug up a lot of vocabulary, and to a certain extent, it's true. You need to know vocabulary. Your vocabulary should be good enough. Now, but to just think of GRE verbal listening as vocabulary is not correct. Okay, so you might be taking a wrong approach in that sense. So one thing that you have to clearly understand is that whatever you are reading, you have to clearly understand the meaning of what you read. If you're able to understand the context in which the entire passage is set, you will be able to predict the answers. That is why it's not as a verbal reasoning test. You are trying to reason which word goes there. So that reasoning part has to come. Only if you learn to reason, that should be your first step. Okay. And then vocabulary also plays a role here, because if you don't know the meaning of, let's say, forgery, if you don't know the meaning of, let's say, varied, discrepancy, ambiguity, then that's going to create problems. Okay. But fundamentally, you have to basically understand the context of this text, and you also need to predict what answer will go here. Okay. So let's try to do that. So what I'm going to do is I will just try to read it. The question of dash, the question of something in photography has lately become non-trivial. Now, here is a word that you may not know. So, what is trivial? Trivial is not significant. So, non-trivial means it has become significant. Prices for vintage prints. Now, for vintage prints, they have given an explanation also. Vintage prints are those made by photographer soon after he or she made the negative. Okay, fine. So, prices for vintage prints so drastically dash in the 1990s that one of those photographs means those photographs, which photographs are they referring to? Vintage photographs. So that one of the vintage photographs might fetch 100 times as much as a non-vintage print of the same image. So what exactly the sentence is saying? So prices for the vintage prints as in the first print that the photographer is taking of that particular shot. So that the price of that particular print might fetch 100 times more than a non-vintage print of the same image. Okay. It was perhaps only a matter of time before someone took advantage of the dash to peddle newly created vintage prints for profit. Okay. So you try to understand the whole context, try to understand the gist of this text. So what is happening here? So the question of something in photography has lately become non-trivial. So the question of something in photography has lately become significant. Prices for, let's say, X, okay, X is our vintage prints. Prices for X so drastically in the 1990s that one of the X might fetch 100 times as much as a non-vintage print of the same image. So as much as a similar X, you can say similar X, non-vintage print of the same image. Now, which one of these? I think most of you have answered it correctly for the second one, ballooned, because this is very clear, right? Price of X is 100 times price of Y is what they are trying to convey. So price of X has so drastically ballooned. It is not weakened, it is not varied, it is ballooned. So drastically increased in the 1990s that one of those photographs might fetch. So this is straightforward. Okay. Now look at this statement. Price of X is 100 times more than a similar X. It was perhaps only a matter of time before someone took advantage of the dash. Now, a lot of people think, a lot of you have answered as duplicity. Now, duplicity is not correct. So, they are taking advantage of what? So, price of X is 100 times price of why is the sentence just before that statement. So there is a huge discrepancy. There is a huge difference between the price, and this is what they are taking advantage of. So they are taking advantage of the price difference to peddle newly created vintage prints for profit. So what exactly will come in the first one? The question of, is it influence in photography? Although influence grammatically fits in, it is not contextually fitting in. It's going to be forgery. The question of forgery, that is, you creating fake prints in photography, has lately become significant. Price of a vintage print has so drastically ballooned that it costs 100 times as much as non-vintage print of the same image. It was perhaps only a matter of time before someone took advantage of the discrepancy, that is, difference in the pricing, to peddle newly created vintage prints for profit. Is this clear to all of you? So the answer is A, D, G.
Yeah, students have written yes.
Okay. Any questions? Any queries? Any doubts in any of these points?
No.
All right. Now understand that this is a hard question. So this is a hard question in GRE. Now think about it. If you are one of those person who is thinking that vocabulary is what is really needed, so I have to mug up a lot of vocabulary, ask yourself this question, whether your approach, okay, towards looking at GRE questions or answering GRE questions is right or wrong. Okay, so it's, if you understand the context clearly, you will be able to predict the answers. Okay, so a lot of importance should be given to reasoning. Okay, of course, vocabulary is required. I'm not saying, as we mentioned in the start also, you need to know the meanings of these. So one thing that you should do is, rather than mugging up a lot of words, what you could do is you can do a lot of reading comprehension question itself, and that too critically. So try to understand the meaning of sentences. Try to understand the connection between sentences. So when you try to do that, whenever you come across words that you may not know, whenever you come across structures that you don't know, you can learn those structures. Okay, so that way it becomes even more clear to you. Okay, so it's a much effective way of acquiring words or vocabulary rather than just mugging up a word list. Okay, so let's look at the next question. I'm assuming that there is no doubt for this question, so I'm moving to the next question. Now, this question type is sentence equivalence. So here you can see that there is a text with a single blank, and look at the instructions. Select two answer choices that, when used to complete the sentence, fit the meaning of the sentence as a whole and produce completed sentences that are alike in the meaning. Okay, so you have to, so this is a multiple choice, multiple answer question type, so you will be able to choose more than one answer. So you have to select two answer choices which will fit in this blank, okay, without distorting the meaning of it. Okay, both the words should convey the same meaning. So read the text, take 2 minutes. Again, try to clearly understand the context. If you are able to understand the context, you will be able to answer it properly. Any answers?
No, not yet.
Okay. Last 30 seconds.
Student has written it's difficult.
Okay.
Sanjay is
Okay.
writing D, option D.
Okay. So student has to give two answers. Okay.
Okay.
So it's going to be A, B,
So
B, C, A,
yeah,
F.
one answer is given as AF.
So there are students who have answered it as A, F. Okay.
One student has answered it AF. I think other are doing trying to solve. I mean, Sanjay has written D, but Sanjay, there has to be two options.
Right. So whoever commented it as difficult, can you also tell what makes it difficult?
So
What
the
is the
person,
difficult
the
part in it?
student who has written difficult, he has answered as AF.
Acha.
Comma F, so A and F options, and Sanjay is writing that one is D, I think.
Hmm.
Next, I think he's trying to solve, but one is D.
Okay. Yeah. Just wait for maybe let's say another 30
Yeah,
seconds,
yeah,
please.
yeah, 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 sure.
All right. So let's discuss. Yes, Rahul?
Yep, yep, yeah,
All right. Now clearly the task here is to you choose two words from the listed options that will fit in here without so that it won't change the meaning of the complete sentence, right? Now, see, someone went for clarity and thoroughness, you said. So ask yourself, if I use clarity here, it will give me some meaning, right? The demands of clarity notwithstanding. And if I use thoroughness here, am I getting the same meaning of the entire sentence is something that you should definitely ask. Okay. So if you have gone for thoroughness, the similar meaning would have been comprehensiveness. Okay, so I'm not saying whether thoroughness is right or comprehensive is right or clarity is right. So I'm just trying to give you an idea that that is the way you should approach this. Okay, because it has to be synonym. Okay, so that the meaning of the entire sentence is similar. Okay, now let's look at this. The demands of dash notwithstanding. Now, how many of you know the meaning of notwithstanding? See, notwithstanding is a word that's introducing a contrast. Okay, so whenever you see such words, okay, notwithstanding, nevertheless, however, although, understand that these are signals for you. Okay, these are not as signal words or signpost words. So notwithstanding basically means in spite of. Okay, you can even use notwithstanding in the beginning of the sentence. Notwithstanding the demands of something or the demands of dash demands of something notwithstanding. Both are right constructions. Okay. So in spite of the demands of something, a page or two in Dahl's recent book. So Dahl is an author. Dahl's recent book on democracy that considered what public choice economics has to say about democratic failure, or at least a clear signpost to that literature would have been helpful. Now again, you see these hyphens over here. So understand that these are extra information that is given to you. Okay, even if you don't read this part, you will still be able to understand the gist of the entire sentence. Okay, so for example, the demands of, in spite of the demands of something, a page or two in Dahl's recent book on democracy that considered what public choice economics has to say about democratic failure. So even this part also, if you look at it, if you want to keep it very short, a page or two in Dahl's recent book on something. So this entire part you can treat as something. The demands of dash notwithstanding, or in spite the demands of dash, a page or two in Dahl's recent book on something would have been very well spent. That is the crux of this entire sentence. Okay, that is the skeleton of this sentence, you can say. So the demands of, in spite of the demands, let me just write it down. In spite of the demands of dash, a page or two in Dahl's book would have been very well spent. Are you able to understand this? Yes, no? Do you think that this could be very well the crux of that sentence, the skeleton of that sentence? A page or two on something, okay? A page or two on something. Okay, that's something I know, that something is book democracy that considered what public choice economics has to say about democratic failure. Okay. But I can actually think of this as something, X or Y or whatever. So are you able to understand this part? So in spite of, or even though there is a demand of something, still a page or two on that particular thing, on something, would have been very well spent. So what is the context here? What is it that the author is actually trying to say? Even though there is a demand of something, a additional page or two on something would have been very well spent. So he's trying to give the advice that an extra page or two would have been very well spent. So even though the demand of what is what you're trying to answer. So even though the demands of what? Even though there is a demand, in spite of the demands of keeping it short, even though there is a demand of keeping the entire thing short, an extra page or two on this particular thing in Dahl's book would have been very well spent. Are you able to get this idea? Any question? Any doubts?
So, yeah, people are able to get. Guys, you can raise your hand if you want to ask any question in between. There's a raise hand option.
Okay, so no questions now, right now?
No, right now I can't see any question.
Okay. So the prediction here is that even though there is a demand of keeping the text, keeping the whole book short, so keeping it short is something that we would expect here. So even though we have to keep it short, if an extra page or two would have been very well spent. That is the meaning of this entire thing. So the whole text, if you knew the correct meaning of notwithstanding, probably you would have been able to get to this level, this basic sentence skeleton of the sentence, and then you would have probably predicted that, okay, so keeping it short is the right option here. So you will look for the meaning that conveys that, okay, what is that, what are those words which basically conveys that you have to keep it short. So demands of brevity. Okay, so you have to keep it concise. And economy. Okay, economy as in economical. Clarity and cogency. Okay, so these two are similar words, but then these won't fit in here. Okay, because the demand is to keep it short. The demand is not to make it more clear, because a page or two, they are talking about extending that text a bit more. Okay, adding a few more pages to the book. Comprehensiveness, again, by the same logic, comprehensiveness and thoroughness are synonyms, but it won't fit in here because the demand is not for comprehensiveness or thoroughness. Does it make sense? Yes, no?
Yeah. Yes. Answer, sir.
Okay. All right. So let's look at the next question. Let's see how much time do we have, Rahul?
Yeah, we have around 15 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So there is one more question. So this is reading comprehension. So in reading comprehension, I will just quickly tell you, because if we try to discuss this thing, then probably we won't be able to take the other two questions, which is also equally important. So you will get a passage. Okay, so you can get a short passage, long passage. So all you can expect all those, and based on the passage, you will have to answer the question. Okay. Now again, understand that some of these passages might seem difficult for you in the beginning, but if you patiently read it, okay, and one classic mistake that a lot of students make in their learning phase is that when they are learning also, they are trying to solve it within 1 minute or 2 minutes. Okay, so even understand that GRE is a time bound test. For 20 verbal questions you get about 40 minutes to solve. Okay, so, but then the point is that when you are learning something, you are understand that you are trying to understand or assimilate information. Okay, so when you're if you're just a beginner, okay, and this is especially true for beginners, if you have just started your preparation, try to focus more and more on the meaning. Okay, and once you gain experience after solving, let's say, a few questions, then you will pick up the speed. Okay, so don't focus right straight away, focus on time. Okay, and that's a classic mistake. Okay, so first try to understand what the problem is. Okay, if you are not able to even understand the meaning of the text, then that's not going to help. Okay, so first try to understand what exact problems are you facing. Okay, now that is basically the idea that I wanted to convey today also, that a lot of people think of GRE as a vocabulary thing, but more than that, understand that it's a verbal reasoning segment. Okay, so it's basically testing your reasoning. Now you may come across in colleges also, after your once you enroll into a college, you may have to write thesis and you may have to read a lot of journal articles. Okay, so it's basically testing your ability to read and understand things. Now even there also you may come across words that you may not have heard or seen before, right? Now especially when you're not taking the test, you can of course take the assistance of a dictionary. But then, even without dictionary, also by the looking at the context, you should be able to predict what that is the meaning of that particular word. Okay, so what I would really recommend is, instead of mugging up words, try to understand, try to spend more time in these kind of questions, and critically try to understand the meaning of these sentences and how each sentences are connected with each of these other sentences. Once you do that, and once whenever you come across a word that you have not seen before, understand that all these are academic passages. Okay, now, so, and the words that you will encounter are going to be academic vocabulary. So you can note down those words. So in the previous one, I don't think many of you understood the meaning of the word notwithstanding. So understand that those contrast words, some of the contrast words, okay, you should know how to use it, what is the correct usage of those words, and what is the correct meaning of those words. Okay. Now, so there are a certain list of words that you should definitely be knowing. Okay, and then extra words whenever you come across these passages, and whenever you are in that learning phase, try to invest time there and clearly try to understand, get the meaning of it. Okay, initially it's going to take some time for you, but you will understand that over a period of time your accuracy will start improving, your speed also will come down. Okay. Okay, so the basic idea here is that you will get a passage, and based on the passage there will be a question, and you need to clearly answer this question. So if you are able to understand the meaning of the context of this passage, you will be able to answer it very easily. Okay. Now, again, yeah, if you don't have enough time, what I will do is I will just quickly go to the next question, because discussing this question might take a bit longer. Especially because you have just started. Most of the audience here are have just started learning GRE, and I don't want to just scare you in the beginning itself. Okay, so let's look at another question type. So this is a math question. So this falls within quantitative reasoning. So in quantitative reasoning, you have two question types. One is quantitative comparison, and the other one is problem solving. So in quantitative comparison, you will be given two quantities. Okay, quantity A, quantity B. And these are the standard answer choices. And there will be some information regarding these quantities, related to these quantities, also in the question. So there is a circle that is given, and then it is also mentioned that the areas of two shaded regions, so shaded regions referring to these regions, the area of two shaded regions are equal. And then quantity A is area of unshaded region A, quantity B is area of unshaded region B. Out of these four answer choices, you have to choose the correct answer. So give it a shot, give it a try.
So, students have answered C. All the students.
All the students? Oh,
C.
fantastic. Okay. How many responses have you got, Rahul?
So yeah, so currently in the session there are two students, Sanjay and Mouse D, and both have answered as C.
Okay, fine. Okay, now when I planned this session, I thought that I will only take hard questions. Okay, and to show you that why the question is hard. Okay, now a lot of you have answered it as C, right? Now, why do you think it is C? So even after, I'm not saying, I have not yet answered it. I'm not yet disclosed the correct answer for this question, but I want to understand from you what made it. Why did you choose C? Why do you think that two quantities are equal? Because it looks like they are equal, right? Because you might have assumed that this is the center. If this is the center, yes, your argument is right. Then this region A and this region B are equal in size. But is it mentioned anywhere that this is the center? It's not mentioned. It just looks like it is the center. What if the center is here? Or what if the center is here? Are you getting it? Are you able to understand this? Yes, no?
Yeah, uh, student has written, then is it D? And one has written,
Then
oh, center isn't mentioned.
yes, yes. See,
Then,
that is why. See, a lot of times what happens is now that is why this is a hard question because a lot of people answer it as C. So for all these standardized tests, difficulty is basically determined by the accuracy of that particular accuracy that the test makers, the accuracy as in how many people get it right. Okay, so a lot of people get it right for the same reason that a lot of people get it incorrect for the same reason why you got it incorrect because they tend to assume that it looks like okay it's a center, but if it's not explicitly mentioned, you can even think of this as something like this. Okay, probably the center is somewhere else. Center is here, let's say. In that case, this becomes A and this becomes B, and A is smaller than B. Okay, so in some cases, if this is the center, both are equal. All right, so I hope you understood this part. So again, it's just about clearly analyzing the question. Okay, so these are traps that the test makers know that you will fall for. So you have to think like a test maker. Okay, so what is it that additionally I could have given here, just to make it so clear that these two are equal. If that information is missing, it means that the answer is not C. All right. So let's look at our final question. Okay. So this one is probably a simpler one for you. It's a problem solving question. So problem solving question, you get a question and then you have 5 answer choices. You have to choose the correct answer. Okay, so standard, something that you have already uh, done in your college or in school. So let's try to answer this question.
uh, so
Mhm.
students have answered D.
Okay.
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
sorry, sorry, sorry. D. Moz and Sanjay, is the, I mean, are you answering it as D or I think it was for the last answer. Yeah, the last answer it was for D.
Okay. Okay.
One student
Well,
is asking, is calculator allowed in GRE?
so calculator is allowed. You get an on-screen calculator. Okay. But don't even try to attempt this particular question in a calculator.
Okay. So I think students are taking, taking their time. They are.
Okay. Okay. Let's wait for 30 seconds or 1 minute.
Yeah. So one answer is has come. It's B. That is
B is for
two.
Bangalore. Okay.
Yeah.
ठीक है. Okay, we'll wait for one more answer and then we will.
Yeah, the second student's writing, I have no clue.
Okay. 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 First of all, understand that the question is very straightforward. Okay. So this is a fraction 1 by 2 power 11 into 5 power 17. You know that this can be converted into a decimal also. So if you try to convert this into a decimal, you will get a very lengthy decimal here. Okay. That is why I was saying that don't even try to attempt this question, in the calculator segment, that calculator that you get on screen. Okay. Because it's going to be very lengthy and you will get a answer in a different notation and then still that's going to uh, create problems. Okay. See, one good thing here is that you know that it's 2 power 11 and 5 power 17, and you also know that 2 into 5 is 10, correct? Now if the denominator was 1 by 2 power 17 into 5 power 17, this would have been very easy for you, right? Because you know that, okay, it's going to be 1 into 2 into 5 whole power 17. So that is going to be 1 by 10 power 17. So what is 1 by 10 power 17? You will have lot of 0.000000. But it's 2 power 11 here. But I know that if I can bring this fraction into this form, then it becomes very easy for me, because something by 10, 10 square, 10 cube, 10 to the power 4 is very easy for me to work out, right? So what will you do to bring it in this form? What can you do to get this decimal? What you can do is you can multiply both numerator and denominator by.
Amrish, your screen, you have to share the screen again. There's some,
Is it?
yeah.
Okay. Right. Um,
I think there was some network issue at your end, and
okay. Let me just quickly share. Okay.
yeah. So in between that, Sanjay has asked non-zero digits means we don't have to say zero after the decimal point, right?
Hmm. Yeah. So how many non-zero digits will the decimal have is the question. So of course, when you have, let's say, 1 by 10 to the power 10 or something, you have a lot of zeros after this decimal point, right? So how many non-zero digits? So I'm only interested in that last digit, which is not zero. So all these are zeros. I'm interested in how many non-zero digits are there. Did I answer your question, Sandeep?
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah. So what I was trying to tell you here is that the easiest way to handle such problems is that I know that if I can bring the denominator in the form of 10 to the power of something, it becomes very easy for me, because I know that 1 by 10 is 0.1, 1 by 10 square is 0.01. So 1 by 10 to the power 10 also, I can write it as 0.0000 something, right? So to bring the denominator as a power of 10, one thing that you could do is you multiply, because it's 5 to the power 17 and 2 to the power 11. So a 6 to power 6 is missing here. You can multiply both numerator and denominator by 2 power 6. When you do that, you will get this as 2 power 6 by, what is 2 power 11 into 2 power 6? 2 power 17. 2 power 17 into 5 power 17. So now I know that it's 2 power 6 by 10 power 17. 2 power 17 into 5 power 17 is, I can write this as 2 into 5 whole power 17. and that is nothing but 10 power 17. Now what is 2 power 6? 2 power 6 is what? It's going to be 64 by 10 power 17. Now 1 by 10 power 17, you know that it's going to be 0.00000000, and then you have a 64 at the end. So the number of non-zero digits is going to be only 2. So this is the first digit, this is the second non-zero digit. Everything else before it is 0. Does that make sense? Understood?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, super. Okay, so yeah, so the basic idea for today's session was to basically make you understand what approach are you following when you look at a question, whether it is a verbal listening question or a quantitative listening question, and whether your approach is as effective as you think it is. Okay, so if you don't think your current approach is effective, you have to probably switch to an approach which works all the time. Okay, and especially for verbal reasoning, it's very likely that if you are towards very near towards your exam, you a lot of students do this. Okay, that is, they just try to mug up a lot of words 1 week before the exam, and that's definitely not a very good strategy. Okay, so if you're preparing for GRE, I would suggest that you start early, and then even in the initial days you should try to focus a lot on meaning. Okay, meaning of the entire sentences, just like how we did it today. So the more and more you try to approach it in that sense, the exam itself, the test itself will become the whole more interesting, and you will also try to explore the meanings of words yourself whenever you encounter such words. So, so that's the whole point, guys. Okay, so do you have any questions?
Yeah. So one question is, how much time does it take generally to prepare for GRE?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So it depends on what your current level is. Okay, now that is why it's very important that in the beginning phase of your preparation itself, we advise you to take a mock test. Okay, mock test, we call it diagnostic test. Okay, diagnostic test and mock test pretty much means the same thing. um, it's basically to test what's your current ability level. Okay, so the idea of taking diagnostic test in the beginning of your preparation is to make you understand the test. So when you try to solve questions in the beginning phase of your preparation, of course you don't know the question types, you don't know a lot of concepts also, you may not remember all the concepts also, that's all fine. But it's still important for you to take a diagnostic test to understand that without any preparation, this is the level, this is the score that I'm getting. Okay, without any preparation, let's say you got a score of, let's say, 295. And then if you have this data with you, it will be very easy for you to track how much progress are you making. Okay, so probably after 1 month of study, you may take another mock test and you may see that, okay, I've improved, let's say, up to 310, right? So diagnostic test is something that you should definitely do in the beginning of phase of your preparation to assess what is your current level. Based on your current level, you will be able to define how much time you require to get to that target score. So for example, if you're scoring somewhere around, let's say 275 or so, which is, understand that as I mentioned in the beginning also, 260 to 340 is the scoring range. 260 is the minimum that you can get, 340 is the maximum that you can get. If all your questions are wrong, if all your answers are wrong, then you will get a 260. Okay, think of it that way. 275 is like very close to 260, so it's a very weak score, I would say. And also it also depends on what is your target score. So let's say your target score is 320. So that this jump is what basically decides the preparation time. Okay, if it's a 40-point jump, okay, then it might take, let's say, 80 plus hours of preparation. Okay, so again, it's very hard. It's very hard to come up with that number. But I hope you got the idea that understand your current level, understand the target score, that gap. Okay, the difference between that current score and target score is what determines your um, study period. Okay, the preparation period. I hope I answered your question.
Yep. One more question is there, that is this all the total sections we will have in GRE?
Okay, so as I mentioned, test structure is, understand that you will get an AWA. This is analytical writing assessment. So you have to basically write two essays. Okay, you will be given 30 minutes each for these two. And then you have a verbal reasoning section and a quant reasoning section. Each will have 20 minutes. And then, so this is, you will get another verbal reasoning section and a quant reasoning section. 20 questions. 20 questions. And then you will get one more section which can be either verbal or quant. Okay. So you may get 3 verbal, 2 quant, 1 AWA, or you can get 3 quant, 2 verbal, or 1 AWA. Understand that if you're getting 3 verbal, understand that one of that verbal section is going to be experimental. It's not taken into account for grading. That one particular out, but you don't know which one is that. It can be this one, it can be this one, or it can be this one. Okay, so this is something that the test makers do to understand how students answer these questions. So they basically take that section into section for their research purposes. Okay, so this is the general exam structure. So you start with an AWA which consists of 2 essays, 30 minutes each. Then you get a verbal reasoning section, quant reasoning section, 20 minutes, 20 questions, 30 minutes. Quant reasoning, 20 questions, 35 minutes. So same thing here also. And depending on verbal or quant, it can be 30 or 35 minutes. Now understand that GRE is a computer adaptive test. Okay, computer adaptive test meaning it adapts to your level. So it's a section wise adaptive test. So based on your performance in this particular section, you will get questions in the second section. So for example, if you have not done really well in this section, then the quality of questions, okay, the level of questions that you're going to get in this particular section will be medium. If you have done exceedingly well in this particular section, then you will get hard questions in this particular section. Okay, so at some point during the exam, if you feel that you are getting a lot of difficult questions, it means that you're actually doing good. Okay? And your intent should be to get more and more difficult questions. Okay, yeah, that's the general structure. And within the verbal reasoning section, you will get all the question types that we discussed today. And within the quantitative reasoning section also, you will get 2 types of question. One is problem solving and the other one is quantitative comparison. Problem solving is basically multiple choice questions. In multiple choice questions, you may get a single answer question, that is multiple choice single answer. There can be questions with multiple choice multiple answers, and there can be also questions where you just enter your answer, grid in. Okay, numeric entry type questions. Okay, so we should have had a separate slide for it if there were enough students who were just starting to prepare for GRE. So that was not the agenda of today's session anyways. All right, so yeah, Did I answer your question? I hope I answered your question.
Yep, yeah.
Any more questions?
Yeah, so there's one more question. I mean, we have time to pick one more question. I think that's
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's it's difficult to score ourselves during practice test in AWA. Is it
Yeah.
difficult to
So
score? Any suggestions on how to do that?
okay. So AWA, understand. AWA is also an important part. Okay. The most important part is this segment where this is the first thing that your admission school manager will look at. Okay, what is your GRE score? So when you say your GRE score, you say a number that is 315, okay, 320. Okay, you rarely say your AWA score. So AWA is scored on a scale of 0 to 6. Okay, so this is the section that will contribute a score of 260 to 340. And for AWA, anything above 4, okay, or even 3.5 is considered as a decent enough score. Okay, anything if it's above 4, it's better. Um, Now I understand your point that someone external has to review your AWA. Okay, only then you will be able to understand it. You can't yourself grade it. Okay, that's correct. So you can reach out to a faculty who can look at your AWA and then give you a proper feedback on what exactly you need to improve, what are the mistakes in it. So that's something someone external has to tell you. Okay, but I would still suggest that you give importance to this segment. Okay, if you're in the final stage and then you are asking this question, it makes a lot of sense, because usually AWA, what happens with AWA score is that, let's say you've already scored a 330 plus. Okay, so a score of 3.5 or 4 in AWA will work. Okay, because you have scored really well here. Now let's say you're scoring somewhere around 315 or so, and your AWA score is only 3. Okay, so this becomes slightly difficult situation because if there is another person also with similar score and similar profile as yours, and then if their average AWS score is, let's say, 3.5 or so, it becomes slightly challenging to make that decision on whom to take. So that is why so AWA comes into picture in such senses. Okay, so it's very it's, I wouldn't say don't you have to of course give importance to AWA, but primary importance for this section, verbal listening and quantitative. I hope this answers your question.
Yep, yeah. I think yeah, yes. The student has written yes. Thank you. And as we are running out of time, I think we can end this session. Okay. And thank you so much, Ambarish, for giving this such an informative session. And I hope the students who are here uh, were able to understand everything and got, I mean, the very useful information about GRE. And the students who are watching us on YouTube and the students who are not able to attend this web session because of any reason, we will send everyone the recording of this session. And also in the that mail, you can put your questions. You can ask your questions. We will also send you the contact details of IMS where you can go and ask your queries and get in touch with them. So thank you so much, Amrish. If you want to add something to it, please go ahead.
Thanks, Rahul. Thank you, GyanDhan, for conducting such a session, and thank you guys for joining this session. So you guys were actually tried out these problems. So I'm really glad if um, you know if that makes any difference in the way you approach future GRE questions. So thank you so much for attending the session and actively participating in it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amrish, and have a great weekend, guys, everyone. Thank you. Bye bye.